Take 4,012. My name is Mandy, and I'm going to be talking about using structure from motion to be able to calculate tree volumes so we can use... My name is Mandy, and I'm going to be talking about art and architecture, evaluating trees for hyperlocal sustainable development using structure from motion. While a majority of topics in this class delved into the methodology of using UAV data to collect information in a scientific context, I wanted to flip this notion onto its head a bit and focus on utilizing trees as an artistic medium to capitalize on their initial properties and a building source. For the last year and a half, I've lived off-grid, no water, no electricity, and no bills. I put the house that I bought onto the market and will use the profits from repairing it to purchase land to build my own hyperlocally sourced house for as low a cost as possible, trying to live completely mortgage-free. I'm hoping that this house will be designed around the trees that I have on my new property and will embody my love of woodworking and farming that is environmentally friendly. Hyperlocal architecture is essentially letting a site and its changeable environmental factors play an important role in the design process. In researching green building techniques that broke people with access to trees can do, I fell in love with the idea of whole tree architecture, which essentially uses the entire tree in the design process. The less marketable timber, so the smaller sizes and cuts, are thinned out with the unique angles that can be used in building processes. This process allows the woodland as a whole to thrive, catalyzing growth and biodiversity. The larger trees are left to grow, where now a pasture can be grown underneath where my livestock can graze. It also keeps trees whole and round instead of milling it into square little features, eliminating another carbon trip. To fully keep the cost down, I'm actually going to build the walls out of straw bales, with the entire construction costs are estimated to be between $5 and $15 per square foot, putting my entire home project under 10,000 square feet. This is compared to a normal home that costs over $125 per square feet. Why whole trees? Well, when trees are left unmilled, they're 50% stronger than the milled timber of the same diameter. They are meant to be blown around with the wind, so they're as strong as steel in tension. And because of their shape, they don't catch fire like other houses do. Whole trees are also net carbon negative in comparison to other building and structural materials, which have a high carbon cost being shipped from all over the world. So the objective of this project was, how can we create information on the tree canopy, stems, and architecture using UAV data to build a house at the location? Traditionally, this has been proven to be successful with terrestrial LiDAR methods. However, for a small farmer or off-grid person, the use of terrestrial LiDAR is cost prohibitive compared to the small off-the-shelf drones. Is it possible to use structure from motion to capture and create point clouds and the junctions of different tree angles? This talk will focus on the methodology and the successful elements with the end user phase, essentially this tree stem diameter and volume, especially in these primary branching areas, which are actually turned out to be the strongest point on the trees. Data acquisition was done with a DJI Phantom 4 with a 12.4 megapixel gimbal. Several trees were flown, and I chose them because I thought they were interesting. Now, several people have reported on many different ways to capture tree stem and crown characteristics based on tree properties. This figure was pulled from a paper on 3D tree dimensionality, and they found that the spiral and vertical meanderings were the best options. However, I'm not a good enough drone pilot to manually do spirals in a tight location, so I chose to focus on these circular methods as well as this vertical meandering to find out which tree best fits in the best areas because they have been proven to be successful in the past. We start simple. A simple single loop around a sweet gum tree, using 2 markers to delineate the dimensions. So this shows the original photograph as well as the 3D structural recreation. The fright was flown with 1.5 meters from a tree, with 37 pictures taken to circuit a tree that is 2.3 meters in circumference at the photographed point. The colors here that you see are distorted from the background, which happens sometimes, especially when there is a stark contrast between the tree and the sky. The volume was actually accurate when I reconstructed and measured it. Next, I recreated the dimensions in an area with a heavily crowded background structure. This is a maple tree in a subdivision, heavily crowded in by other trees. However, these growing conditions have also given it a nice upright structure that is really a perfect candidate for a house. The flight could not be flown in a consistent distance from the tree based on the brush surrounding the tree. So I utilized the vertical meandering manner when I went up and I checked vertically to make sure the drone target wouldn't hit anything. And then I increased the elevation by a ½ meter and took a picture. And I did that 15 to 20 times in each location. A total of 391 pictures were used. The low alignment was used with 9 markers to help the algorithms be able to catch the tree. And you can see on the top of this tree, again, we've got some sky artifacts in here. So I was able to successfully model a 7-meter tall segment of the tree, and the diameter actually matches very closely with what was done. However, we had some issue with the volume calculation. There were some artifacts created on the back end, and the trees were flattened out on this back end a little bit as well. And this had to do a little bit with some issues about the Phantom 4 itself being weird. I had to change the battery mid-flight, and when I took off from the same takeoff spot, the elevation was off by 10 meters for one of them. So I had 391 pictures here, so I deleted the 200 that went around the back of the tree and still was able to get the successful diameter recreation. The volumes are accurate enough that I think we would still be able to use them, but it's definitely something we need to be careful of in the future. These quadcopters are still the best option, and I've got to learn with the Phantom 4 learner idiosyncrasies in order to be good at this. Finally, I adjusted the gimbal angle. I was flying a complicated mimosa tree in a suburban neighborhood, and I used a circle that increased in diameter the higher I got in the frame. By the time I got to the 3rd pass, I stopped at 25 different locations in the circuit, but took photographs of the tree at 4 different gimbal angles between level and 30 degrees. Before I landed, I also took 2 pictures of the tree that in full context because it was an open space and I could see it. This gave us great information for limbs up to 4 meters tall, which was astonishing considering I only flew at 2 meters of height. Doing the circular capture motion with multiple angles might be able to be done from above to produce the prediction accuracy higher up in the tree. I don't really need that. I'm more concerned about the bottom 4 meters for what I'm going for, but this is a 3 centimeter offshoot branch that modeled in perfect volume. However, the higher up in the tree, some of these ½ centimeter offshoots the mimosa was shooting up weren't actually measured as well. When there are clear and fairly unobstructed trunks, the structure for motion framework works extremely well, both in circuits around the tree and graduated circuits with many different gimbal angles and the up and down vertical meandering. Which choice you decide to fly depends on the complexity of your tree shape. The vertical meandering or the simple circuits are really good for things that go straight up and down without a lot of complicated branches that go in far directions. But if that's what you're looking for, is the cool, complicated structural shapes, you definitely want to use the gimbal angle. Unlike several of the examples in class, we're looking at the side profiles of trees, meaning we have to heavily rely on markers and come up with methodologies for matching points on trees that look homogeneous. This is also the reason that it's really difficult for the structure from motion to pick up forest points. Based on these results, it's definitely possible to use structure from motion in generating volume modules that can be added into design software and given to engineers to build hyperlocally sourced homes. Both circular and vertical meandering can successfully capture tree volume in tight spaces. I prefer the circular method for trees with adjusted gimbals because I like seeing the branches from above and below. That way I can set my diameter as I go. And the more complicated the structure, the more control I have. I'm very excited to be undertaking this building process this summer and can't wait on my own hyperlocal house built out of whole trees on my property and insulated with straw bales so I can work in my wood workshop. I really look forward to the future of this project and where the direction is going to take me. Please work, please work.